Thank you for joining us back here again. We are going to go over the order that was going to release Kemp for Father's Day. And so I have the order right here. I already have some things highlighted for you because I try and keep this as quick as possible. First thing I'd like to bring your attention to is right here. It was filed June 15, 2021 at 2:31 p.m. Okay. No signature, no initials as to who filed it, but it was filed at 2:31. Says right here, court to do what is in the best interest of the child. The best interest of the child. They keep on saying that best interest. I don't think it means what you think it means. All right. So he gets this authority from the Tennessee Code Annotated 36-6-404. 404. Like the error code? 404? I have no clue what their codes mean. But they try and spell it out in a way that maybe you can understand. I don't understand anything they do because it's unnatural. It's just not natural. All right. Point 3. Minimize the child's exposure to harmful parental conflicts. Emphasis added. Emphasis added. Okay. To me, it seems like if the court weren't beating Kemp up and throwing him in jail all of the time, it would minimize a lot of the parental conflicts. Like, if the court didn't give Little Miss X Kemp the power to bring false claims and false allegations into court and have them upheld, which is absolutely insane, then I bet that would minimize a lot of the parental conflict. I bet it would be in the best interest of Kemp's boys and girl that they don't watch him get arrested for taking them camping. Emphasis added. Okay, the court shall make residential provisions for each child consistent with the child's developmental level and the family's social and economic circumstances. So, depending on your status in society and how much money you have, is going to determine what happens to the child. That doesn't always seem to be in the best interest. Doesn't always seem to be in the best interest. But just because you have a lot of status and prestige doesn't mean that you pay your children any attention. That's insane. Believe me, I made a lot more money before I had a son, and I wouldn't put him in daycare because I wished to raise him. Which encourage each parent to maintain a loving, stable, and nurturing relationship with the child. Emphasis added. Well, again, when you arrest one parent consistently and in front of the children, I don't think that that's going to maintain a loving, stable, nurturing relationship with the children and the government. Just like Kemp was talking about, because of Don Ash's actions specifically. His children hate law enforcement. Are being conditioned to. That's why we really wish for law enforcement to uphold law instead of some of these crazy statutes and listening to judicial officers just because they have a judicial officer, when you know in your heart it's wrong. You can't look at this and not know in your heart it's wrong. Okay, so Don Ash was appointed. He says this court was appointed, but Don Ash was appointed by the Tennessee Supreme Court, which is why I kind of feel like they're ultimately liable. Okay? And this was after Chancellor Rambo recused himself. Okay? But Don Ash, not this court, but in some ways, I kind of agree, because we all have our own court. Every man and woman. Don Ash isn't special. He puts his pants on just like you do, one leg at a time, every single morning. Just because he puts on a black robe when he goes to work, it doesn't give him some type of powers of God. Just like the Tennessee Supreme Court. They don't become gods once they walk into work. Believe me. Okay, going on. Regrettably, the high level of harmful parental conflicts. They don't say what the harmful parental conflicts are. They just keep saying harmful parental conflicts. Continued primarily by Mr. Kemp. Another hearing took place March 19th with contempt petitions out alleging Mr. Kemp live streamed the last judicial proceeding on Facebook after being directed by the court not to do so, threatening the court, Miss Kemp, and Little Miss X Kemp and her counsel, and taking one of the children to the emergency room after Mr. Kemp made negative comments to the child. The court ordered the father is permanently enjoined from any further social media posting of any type involving parenting issues of this litigation. The mother of his children or any person associated with this case, he is to delete any current postings immediately, emphasis added. The court modified Mr. Kemp's parenting time to every Saturday and Sunday, but no overnight visits. The court also issued an order of protection against Mr. Kemp due to his constant threats and harassment of Miss Kemp's shepherd, Little Miss X Kemp. Okay. Now, this was before I ever really talked to Kemp. Okay? And he was doing some stuff, even from what I hear, like even back last year at the end of the year. And he was upset and he was angry. I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know what happened with what they're talking about, the father making some negative comments to the child and having going to the emergency room. I posted up Little Miss X Kemp talking about that in the True Law Explained. And I said I didn't know anything about that. But look at what's happening right here. He's being punished for publishing the truth, publishing what has happened in courts. He's being punished for that. That should be incredibly scary because that means that courts are turning into star chambers. Because they're closed proceedings that nobody can witness, and they're grossly unfair to one party and persecuting one party. Which appears to me what's going on. I don't know if I'm just silly. Okay, so once again, the conflict continued and another hearing was held on the 5th day of May, 2021. Okay, I actually forgot to talk about this, but the order of protection they're talking about right here, he forgets to mention that they dropped it because of false allegations, because they knew the allegations were false. They knew that no jury would go for it. He forgets to mention that part. So, alright, they have a hearing May 5th. Mr. Kemp paid back his due child support and filed a bond on his criminal contempt charge. Now, this is the appeal bond. And an appeal bond is only in civil charges. But you can clearly hear Suzanne Cook talk about the appeal bond and how he got out on an appeal bond. And so he didn't serve his complete 20 days. My guess is that they only offered it to him because he filed a writ of restore freedom that they would know as habeas corpus. And they probably didn't want to answer it. So they probably, well, let's come up with something. Let's come up with something. That's just what I think. because that seems to be what they've been doing this entire time. Okay, now, again, his actions led to another court date on the hearing of the 4th. You want to know what that action was? It was taking his children camping. See, they don't talk about this. They don't talk about his actions in disregard for this court orders. They don't talk about what the actual actions are, because he had his children on their court orders parenting time, and then little Miss X Kemp goes and swears out 3 warrants just based on the word of her attorney. Nobody actually checks the record or makes sure it's good. And then he gets arrested for custodial interference. 3 counts of felonies for having his children on his parenting time. They bring him in the 4th day of June. He was taking his kids camping. A vet was taking his kids camping on Memorial Day. For Memorial Day weekend, the first week that he got to get them in a long time, gets arrested. That's silly. They're going to do this as long as the American people put up with it. Here's the ruling, and this is the ruling from, the 12th day of June? No, June 15th at 2:31. So, well after June 4th. Accordingly, the court is amending its previous order, and Mr. Kemp is to be released from jail on June 18, 2021 at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, and then it goes into him having remaining days and what's going to happen with that. And I don't care about the first 2 elements, because they're just telling Kemp how to administrate his personal affairs. The 3rd and 4th element is what I'm more interested in. The 3rd, he is to delete any social media posting by him or on his behalf regarding this litigation, his children, his ex-wife, her counsel, and this court, plus refrain from additional posting. See, he's not even trying to order Kemp. He's saying if the rest of us don't stop talking about this, they're going to keep beating Kemp up and putting him in a cage. If that doesn't scare the crap out of you, I don't know what will. Are you going to stand for this? He is to refrain from discussing this litigation or his ex-wife with the minor children. How wrong is that? You can't discuss your ex-wife, even if your children try talking with you about mommy. Because we're ordering you not to. The only part of this litigation I'm aware of that he has discussed with his children that have been on the record since I've seen it is the fact that he was going to take them camping for his parenting time when he got arrested for taking them camping for his parenting time. And I don't think that that's something awful to tell the children unless you're going to arrest him taking him camping on his parenting time and you just don't want the children to see how corrupt you are. He will have parenting time on June 20th, Father's Day 2021, and June 26th, 2021, from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But we all know that didn't happen. Here's a judge's signature. Here's Don Ash's signature. And here's a copy that it was served. Thank you, Mark Metz, for sending me, copying and pasting, and sending me this resource talking about what's going on. So this is South Carolina law. It comes from Gregory S. Foreman's page, attorney at law, and he's talking about having conversations about when family court rulings become effective, because that's pretty important, and how to carry them out. anyways, it says in Cohn versus Conrad, which was an appellate court case in 2011, until written and entered, the trial judge retains discretion to change his mind and amend his ruling. Now, what that's also saying is that after they've made their ruling and they've entered it into the record, they can't just change it on their own. They can't just change it without anybody motioning or moving the court to do so. So if it wasn't the writ of habeas being correct and the Supreme Court not wanting to answer and having to trick us into thinking that they were going to do the right thing and then not, explain why Don Ash put that paperwork into the case. Here is another case. An order is not final until it is entered by the clerk of the court and until the order or judgment is entered by the clerk of the court, the judge retains control of the case. Again, that's saying when the order is entered by the clerk, the judge doesn't have any control of the case after that. Not unless somebody moves the court to do something. And then just think about, and I don't have a picture of the order on me, but just think about what they're saying about the legislation denying the Supreme Court the right to have jurisdiction over a habeas case. One of the things that I thought was really interesting reading some of this modern case law, because I stick to reading a whole lot of really, really old case law. But I'm just going to use Marbury versus Madison as an example. In Marbury versus Madison, and I don't remember all of the characters in the case, I don't remember all of the specific details, but basically what was happening is that whoever was president before Jefferson created a position, I think for Secretary of State or somewhere in that cabinet, and Congress had approved the individual. The paperwork was signed by the executive, the president at that time, and it just hadn't been delivered. It was signed and sealed, and it just hadn't been delivered. And when Jefferson got in, whoever was supposed to be secretary ends up suing whoever became, I think it was Madison, ended up suing Madison. And they were basically like, hey, all of these processes were done, and I'm not secretary. That's my rightful position. And so the Supreme Court, because of politics, having no jurisdiction, took the case. And they made Jefferson's people come in, and they still wouldn't testify after taking the stand because they were like, you don't have jurisdiction, you don't have jurisdiction. That was basically their argument the whole time. But they went through the entire process of how this legal process becomes lawful and how they execute it in the administration of their government. There was no debate about it. It's not an academic debate. It's a question of law. And in these cases, they're just talking about the specific question that they were asked, which is why attorneys sit around and debate all of the points of law, is because they don't talk about those in case law anymore. They don't talk about all of the other points that deal with that case. They just talk about the one specific point that you're asking about. And if you're looking at Marbury versus Madison, that should just show you how silly the Supreme Court's argument is in Tennessee, because, well, what Jefferson's people were saying the whole time was that the Supreme Court didn't have jurisdiction. The Supreme Court exercised jurisdiction, and at the end, they found that they didn't have jurisdiction because it came from a statute, and a statute can't limit the Supreme Court's jurisdiction. or expand it. Anyways, they're gonna turn all these courts into star chambers unless you do something about it. Bunch of people are gonna be up there on what day? On the 30th of June at 9 a.m. We would appreciate it if you could come as well. So if we don't get enough people to make sure law's upheld, we're not going to have any anymore. Ever. I mean, just look at what the director of the FBI said about how many politicians were being bribed by China on the state level all the way up to the federal level last year. China's going to buy us. China's already bought us. If the American people don't come and do something about it. If we don't take care of this ourselves on the ground. Anyways, that's it. That's all I got for you right now. Think about it, especially if you're an attorney. This is how they controlled the education. One world, love, and peace.
Let's say God gave us the original 10. He gave the British 13. The British Bill of Rights has 13 stipulations. The Germans have 29. The Belgians have 25. The Swedish have only 6. And some people in the world have no rights at all. What kind of a fucking goddamn God-given deal is that? No rights at all? Why would God give different people in different countries different numbers of different rights? Boredom? Amusement? Bad arithmetic? Do we find out at long last after all this time that God is weak in math skills? Doesn't sound like divine planning to me. Sounds more like human planning. Sounds more like one group trying to control another group. In other words, business as usual in America. Now, if you think you do have rights, one last assignment for you. Next time you're at the computer, get on the internet, go to Wikipedia. When you get to Wikipedia, in the search field for Wikipedia, I want you to type in Japanese Americans 1942, and you'll find out all about your precious fucking rights, okay? All right. You know about it. You know about it. Yeah. In 1942, there were 110,000 Japanese American citizens in good standing, law-abiding people who were thrown into internment camps simply because their parents were born in the wrong country. That's all they did wrong. They had no right to a lawyer, no right to a fair trial, no right to a jury of their peers, no right to due process of any kind. The only right they had, right this way, into the internment camps. Just when these American citizens needed their rights the most, their government took them away. And rights aren't rights if someone can take them away. They're privileges. That's all we've ever had in this country is a bill of temporary privileges. And if you read the news even badly, you know that every year the list gets shorter and shorter and shorter. Sooner or later, the people in this country are going to realize the government does not give a fuck about them. Government doesn't care about you or your children or your rights or your welfare or your safety. It simply doesn't give a fuck about you. It's interested in its own power. That's the only thing, keeping it and expanding it wherever possible. Personally, when it comes to rights, I think one of two things is true. I think either we have unlimited rights or we have no rights at all. It's called the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it.